I wanted to create a video, the greatest Saints roster, 53 men, 53 years, just compile all the best of the best and put together a video. And then I took a look at it and I was like, this is way too easy. Basically, you're just taking top few quarterbacks, top few running backs, et cetera, and it just seemed like it was way too easy and wouldn't make for a very interesting video. So let's introduce some rules. So here are the rules I came up with. You can only use a player once. That seems to be the most obvious rule. I cannot have 3 different versions of Drew Brees be on my team. Once I select Drew Brees from a specific year, he's off the table and I've got to go find some other quarterbacks to fill out my roster. The second rule, 1 player from each of the first 53 seasons, 67 to 2019. Every single one of those rosters has to be represented by somebody for that specific year. Rule number 3 is where it gets like a little bit tough, and that's why it probably took me longer for this video than it should have. Player performance from that season counts, meaning if I pick Drew Brees from 2011, that means I get Drew Brees' production from 2011. It doesn't mean that I have Drew Brees for his entire career. It just means that specific season, that's what I get. That's the version of that player I get the whole way down the line. And the last rule is we have to fill every roster spot. Now you might be asking, what's the roster look like? Let's take a look. So for the 53-man roster, we're looking at 3 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, a fullback, 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends. For my offensive line, I went 2 centers, 3 tackles, 3 guards. Now for the defensive line, I tried to cover whether we're going to go 3-4 or 4-3. So rather than have 4 defensive tackles and then 4 defensive ends, I went 4 defensive ends, 3 defensive tackles, 1 nose tackle. This way, if we go 3-4, I got a big man in the middle. 6 linebackers, 4 corners, 4 safeties, a kicker, a punter, a kick returner, a punt returner, and a long snapper. So like I said, this was not easy. This took a little bit of time to kind of put together because there were definitely, as you can imagine, there were certain guys that I needed to have on the roster in their like special year, you know, and a few names come to mind like George Rogers, Darren Sproles, Michael Thomas. There's a few guys, Jimmy Graham, like they had monster years. I had to slot them in for those years. And then like, as that kind of worked itself out, I kind of filled in the gaps with other guys from other seasons. Without any further ado, let's start at the beginning in 1967. Okay, so we're going to start at the very beginning, the inaugural season, 1967, and our first choice is going to be at cornerback, Dave Witzel. He was the first Pro Bowler in Saints history, earning the Pro Bowl in 1967. He is a Saints Hall of Famer, but again, we can't count that. All we can count is his production that season, so Dave Witzel is our first choice. 1968, we're going to go wide receiver Danny Abramowitz. He accounted for nearly half of Billy Kilmer's passing yards. He had 890 of just over 2,000. It was 2,060 total yards that Kilmer passed for, and also accounted for 7 out of the 15 touchdowns that Kilmer threw. Far and away the best offensive weapon on the team. Abramowitz joins our wide receiver fleet. Rounding out the 60s, 1969, we're going to go with Jake Cupp on this one. He was one of 3 Pro Bowlers from that 1969 season. And anytime you can grab a Saints Hall of Famer and a legend like Jake Cupp this early and fortify your offensive line, I'll take him. Jake Cupp at guard. Now, the 1970s were far and away the toughest decade to fill out the roster with. As things get into the 80s and, you know, you get into a lot of more of the Saints all-time greats, the household names, things like that. But for the 70s, we're going to start in 1970 with cornerback Doug Wyatt. He was a rookie that season, but he did have 4 interceptions as well as a fumble recovery. So obviously he was a bit of a turnover machine coming out into the league. So Doug Wyatt gets a spot on this roster. 1971, we're going to take our first tight end. That's Dave Parks. He was basically the security blanket for a rookie by the name of Archie Manning. 568 yards and 5 touchdowns. Look, in today's NFL, those are good numbers. So 1971, we'll take it. Dave Parks at tight end. So yeah, there was a lot of jumping around in assembling this list, just making sure that you get the right guys, the right years. Like you want to have that all-time great player at their best. So 1972 was literally the last year that I picked, and it fell to defensive end Richard Neal, which I'm not terribly upset about, in that the guy started all 14 of the games that the Saints played that year, ended up with 7 sacks and a fumble recovery. Again, this was the last guy to make the team, and I'm super happy with it. Staying on the defensive line, defensive tackle, our first defensive tackle on the list, Bob Pollard, started all 14 games, just like Richard Neal did. 3.5 sacks that season. Also had a fumble recovery as well. He is a Saints Hall of Famer, but again, we'll take Bob Pollard here to help fill out our roster. We are going back-to-back defensive tackles here, and no all-time roster of mine would be complete without this guy, defensive tackle. In 1974, number 74, Derlin Moore. First season as a starter, he did have 3.5 sacks. But again, Derlin Moore is going to be on my team. This was a good place to fit him in. So there you have it. Joe Fed makes the list in 1975 as our first linebacker. And again, as you can imagine, this is a very heavy, super talented linebacker group that's going to be on this team. So Joe Fed, the first guy to make it, started all 14 games in 1975. He had 5 fumble recoveries. He had 1.5 sacks. Solid year for him at linebacker. And again, I'm getting Joe Fed. I'll take him at 1975. We are taking our one and only fullback here in 1976, Tony Galbraith. A combined 8 touchdowns as a rookie, 7 rushing and 1 receiving, and nearly 1,000 scrimmage yards. He had 570 on the ground, another 420 through the air. I think it's an absolute steal that I get a fullback with this kind of production on the team, especially coming out of the 70s. Speaking of steals, here's another steal at tight end. Our actually second, we only took 3 tight ends on this team. Our second one already here in 1977. Henry Childs, 518 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns, and he only started 10 games. So it's a little heavy to have 2 out of your 3 tight ends this early in the selection, but I'll gladly take Henry Childs at this spot. No surprise that the first quarterback on this team is going to be the first face of the franchise, Archie Manning. Now, granted, in 1978, the Saints were only 7-9, but it took them a while before they even got to a 500 record. So 7-9 was a franchise best at this point. Archie Manning was also NFC Player of the Year. He was on the Pro Bowl. So this was like a coming of age of Archie Manning and what he could do in the NFL. So we'll take him here in 1978. 1979, we're going to take the hard hitter himself at safety, Tommy Myers. 7 interceptions in this season. So gladly have him back in my secondary. This was the only Pro Bowl season of his career as well. So 1979, slot him in, Tommy Myers. Joining Jake Cupp as our second guard, Emmanuel Sanders started all 16 of the Saints games this year. We are talking about a Saints Hall of Famer that 1980 was the highest graded season of his career. So we'll take Sanders here in 1980. 1981 is one of those years where you want to make sure you get the right guy. No matter who did anything, George Rogers was certainly going to be the pick at this spot in running back. 1,674 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, Pro Bowl, first team All-Pro, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was 4th in voting in the Offensive Player of the Year. He was 6th in voting in the MVP. This is, again, one of those years where I don't know where I'm going to go in some of the seasons, but 1981 was George Rogers' season for sure. So we gladly make him the first running back on this team here in 1981. So as sure as I was in 1981 of who I was going to pick, 1982 was tough because I really don't, I'll be honest with you, I do not like this pick. Quarterback Ken Stabler, but I kind of, at this point, I kind of ran out of options. Only 1,343 yards passing, 6 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Look, at this point, he's clearly going to be the third string quarterback on this team. He's just there to fill a spot. Maybe he can teach some of these younger guys something because he was in the twilight of his career at this point. But yeah, fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to slice it, Ken Stabler, our quarterback in 1982. 1983 brings us another Saints Hall of Famer. 16 of 16 starts in 1983 for center John Hill. Also, another one of those times when it was the highest graded season of his career. We'll gladly take the Saints Hall of Famer here in 1983. Joining Tommy Myers at safety is Frank Watlett, 16 of 16 starts. So obviously durable that season. 2 interceptions, one of them he returned to the house, and 2 fumble recoveries. One of them he also returned to the house. So pretty productive scoring season for Frank Watlett. Our second safety in a row in 1985, Terry Hogue, 4 interceptions. One of those he took back to the house, a couple of fumble recoveries. And for a safety to have 92 tackles in a season, especially in the 80s, pretty productive year for Terry Hogue. We're 3 out of 4 safeties in 1985, but I'm okay with the choices I've made. And it should be no surprise to anyone that's a Saints fan or maybe an NFL fan that the kicker that's going to be gracing the field for us on this team is going to be the Great Dane himself, Morton Anderson. Led the league in 1986 in field goal percentage. He was a Pro Bowler and he was a first-team All-Pro. Super easy choice. I knew Morton Anderson was going to be on the team. He just happened to land on the team in 1986. Okay, so we are 20 years into Saints history. We've got our first 20 players selected. And speaking of 20, this video is brought to you by SeatGeek.com. Use promo code JohnButler at checkout. Save yourself $20. Let's get back to the video. And while we're on a break, if you don't mind hitting the like button, that would be fantastic. Let's get back into the list. 1987, our third of 4 cornerbacks already. All 3 guys, their first name starts with D, which is kind of wild, but I promise you the 4th one will not start with a D. Dave Waymer. Dave Waymer is another one of those guys that needed to be on my team. 5 interceptions that season, 3 fumble recoveries. He was a Pro Bowler. He was a second-team All-Pro. Great season for 87. 1987 was one of those seasons where you could have picked one of 10 different guys because a lot of guys had a good season that year, but we're going to go with Dave Waymer here. 1988, we're going back to linebacker, and it is my all-time favorite Saints player. Actually, his jersey hangs above my head in my office. Sam Mills, Jersey's own Sam Mills. First time in his career that he hit over 100 tackles that year, and he was also a Pro Bowler. It wasn't his best season, but Sam Mills fit in this spot, and he absolutely needs to be on my team. So number 51, here we go. 1989, another running back joining the squad, Dalton Hilliard, 1,262 rushing yards, 514 receiving yards, 18 combined touchdowns, which is nuts. 13 on the ground, 5 in the air. He was a Pro Bowler, second-team All-Pro, super productive season for Dalton Hilliard. Gladly take him here in 1989. 1990, Eric Martin joins the wide receiver fleet, our second guy behind Danny Abramowitz. 912 receiving yards that season, 5 touchdowns. He led the Saints in yards from scrimmage. He was that guy for a number of years, super sure-handed. Maybe not the fastest, but I would take somebody like Eric Martin on my team and any year. 1990 happens to be his year. Well, you saw Sam Mills joined the team a couple years prior to this, so you can guess what's coming now. 1991, another one of those magical seasons. Linebacker Pat Swilling, Defensive Player of the Year. Says it all. 17 sacks, which led the NFL. Just a monster performance in 1991 for Pat Swilling. Yeah, super easy choice. You know, it's just so great that these linebackers in the Dome Patrol all had their best seasons different years, because it means I get to pick them all. 1992 linebacker Ricky Jackson, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Saints Hall of Famer, obviously. 13 and a half sacks, which was a career high. So gladly take Ricky Jackson here in 92. 1993, we complete the Dome Patrol, the fourth of four guys. Linebacker Vaughn Johnson, 110 tackles, 81 solo, 5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. Vaughn Johnson just went absolutely nuts in 1993, so we're going to swallow him up here. Our first tackle on the team, Willie Roaf, first time he made the Pro Bowl, and he made a lot of them, but this was the first time. Also, first time he ever made All-Pro. Our offensive line, our starting offensive line, 100% includes this Pro Football Hall of Famer, Willie Roaf, in 94. We needed a wide receiver in 1995, and luckily, friend of mine, Quinn Early, came to the rescue. 1,087 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. Very productive year for Quinn Early. I'll gladly have him on my fleet. 1996, we are going back to defensive end. Joe Johnson, 7.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 60 tackles for a defensive end is pretty good stuff. Joe Johnson, 1996. 1997, look, we needed a long snapper. We grabbed Kendall Gammon here. Crazy enough, I mean, you could tell by the image on the screen, I could not find a single picture of him online in a Saints uniform, like at all. And he played for the Saints for 4 seasons, so kind of wild. But anyway, the way it worked out, I couldn't grab Zach Wood, so we're going to take Gammon here as my long snapper. 1998, we're going to take our fourth and final safety, Sammy Knight. 6 interceptions that season. 2 of them he returned for a touchdown. 3 forced fumbles, 75 tackles. Monster year for Sammy Knight. We'll grab him here in 1998. Joining Joe Fed and the Dome Patrol as our final linebacker here in 1999 as we round out the 1900s. Linebacker Keith Mitchell, 3 interceptions, 115 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Keith Mitchell joins the club. Okay, so we have reached the year 2000, and what better way to start the 2000s than with a 17-sack season from defensive tackle Leroy Glover. He went absolutely nuts. This is one of those years that you just don't forget as a Saints fan if you live through it. Just, you see other defensive tackles and defensive ends around the league throughout the years have these kind of seasons. It was so nice to have one of our guys achieve these kind of numbers. Leroy Glover, easy pick in 2000. Keeping things on the defensive line, in 2001, we're going to take our only nose tackle, just in case we want to go 3-4. We're going to take the big man, Norman Hand. Started all 13 games that he was in, 3.5 sacks, a career best 9 tackles for a loss. He was just a monster in the middle of that line. And, we needed a nose tackle, and I was pretty confident that this is where I was going to go before this list even started. Norman Hand, 2001. No shortage of special seasons on this list. Kick returner, we're going to address that in 2002. Michael Lewis, Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro, set an NFL record for combined kickoff and punt return yardages. We're only taking the kick returner side of Michael Lewis on this one, but 2,432 combined yards, 1,807 of that was kick return. So we'll gladly take Michael Lewis here and fill the one and only kick returner spot on this roster. Our third of 5 running backs to make the list, Deuce McAllister, it was always going to be on this roster. Career high in rushing in 2003 with 1,641 yards, also added 8 touchdowns, 516 receiving yards, which you don't really think of Deuce as being like that dual threat, but you know, he had his years. He definitely did it in 2003. 516 receiving yards on 69 catches, super involved in the offense on both the ground and through the air. 2,157 total scrimmage yards, and at the time that was a club record. So Deuce, right in line with George Rogers and Dalton Hilliard. Deuce with a absolute monster performance happened in 2003. We're gonna grab him here. Okay, so for 2004, wide receiver Joe Horn. We got to have Joe Horn on the team, right? So he was a Pro Bowler in 2004. Personal best that year in both receiving yards at 1,399, as well as receiving touchdowns with 11. Super productive year for Joe Horn. We're going to grab him here in 2004. Our second and final center for the team, 2005, LaCharles Bentley. He started all 14 games. It's the second time in his career he was a Pro Bowler. And I've got to have somebody to pair with John Hill. Can't think of a better guy, Bentley, here in 2005. So 2006 starts the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era. So we're going to go right to the captain for our defensive line number 3, Will Smith in 2006, 10.5 sacks. Now he did have 13 in 2009, but I got somebody else that I needed to slot in for 2009. So his 10.5 sack season and a Pro Bowl selection in 2006 will do just fine for Will Smith, our third defensive end for the team. Our fifth wide receiver of 6 is the Quiet Storm, Marcus Colston in 2007. He had 1,202 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns, personal best throughout his career for Colston. And obviously a crying shame that he was never a Pro Bowler. But this was one of a few seasons that he should have had some consideration. 2007, Quiet Storm, welcome to the club. 2008, I'm going to get a little cheaty with this. I'm going to take Reggie Bush, but I'm going to take him as a punt returner. And trust me, if he's on the roster, we'll use him in other ways. Don't worry. But for the sake of this list, Reggie Bush is my punt returner. He had 4 touchdowns punt returning in his career. 3 of them happened in 2008. Career best 270 punt return yards as well. Reggie Bush was pretty magical in 08, especially at the punt return position. We're going to take him here to help fill out our roster. 2009, we are going to take our third and final quarterback, our starting quarterback, obviously. The Super Bowl championship year deserved Drew Brees to be the guy that we picked for this squad. He led the league in QBR, led the league in completion percentage, led the league in pass touchdowns. He was a Pro Bowler, second team All-Pro, second in MVP voting, second in Offensive Player of the Year voting, monster year. But more importantly than any of those statistics, he brought home the ring. Drew Brees, during our championship year, gets the nod at 2009. Okay, so we have reached the final 10 players of our list, and we got some roster spots to fill out. So let's make this work. Starting in 2010, our final guard of the list, future Hall of Famer and current Saints Hall of Famer, current Saints Ring of Honor member, Jari Evans. First team All-Pro, Pro Bowler in 2010. Super easy selection. Got to have Jari on the list. 2011, again, another one of those seasons where you could have picked any number of different guys. The 2011 Saints offense specifically was so insane, but that all was wrapped around the production of this guy, running back Darren Sproles. Most yards from scrimmage in the history of the NFL. Record still stands today. Darren Sproles in 2011. Talk about a special season. Certainly deserves to be on this list. Well, we need a punter, so when you think of punter and you think of the Saints, there should be one guy that stands above the rest. That's number 6, Thomas Morstead. His only Pro Bowl season, he was a second-team All-Pro in 2012. Seemed like a great spot to grab a great player. Thomas Morstead, welcome to the club. 16 touchdowns. 16 touchdowns for a tight end. Yeah, there's your starter right there. 2013, Jimmy Graham. I mean, highlights for days. That was his year. Jimmy Graham, super, another one of those, like you've got a certain year that you've got to get your guy. 2013 was Jimmy Graham, right from the jump. Well, we need tackles. We only have one tackle on this team, albeit it's Willie Roaf, but we need tackles. So 2014, we're going to take Teron Armstead here. 14 starts, one of the higher grade, not the highest, but one of the higher graded seasons of his career. And I'm good with Armstead and Roaf leading the way at tackle. We've got one more to come before this list is over, though. The man of many hairdos, 2015 defensive end, super funny man and philanthropist, great guy in the community, Cam Jordan. But we're going to count what he did in the 2015 season, which was 10 sacks. It was his second double-digit sack season of his career, his second Pro Bowl. And a personal best at the time, 15 tackles for a loss. Super productive season for defensive end as we round out that group with Cam Jordan. Well, I mentioned a couple of picks ago we were short on tackles, and we now have our third and final tackle. 64 is eligible, and he will be filling in our third and final tackle spot. 2016, Zach Strief started all 16 games of that season, and this was also the highest graded season of his career back in 2016. So we'll slot Strief in here. Super huge guy, and we'll gladly take him on the squad here in 2016. Now 2017, we've only got a cornerback, a running back, and a wide receiver left, and I'm sure most Saints fans can figure out the three players that are going to finish this list. We're going to start at cornerback. Marshawn Lattimore, 5 interceptions as a rookie, part of that incredible 2017 draft class. The greatest cornerback in Saints history joins arguably the greatest team in Saints history ever assembled on YouTube. Marshawn Lattimore, 2017 pick. 2018, we're going to go back to running back. And again, another one of those crazy special seasons. Although Kamara seems to have a lot of them. 2018 belongs to running back Alvin Kamara. 18 total touchdowns, 14 of them on the ground, 4 more in the air. He is like the ultimate running back, the ultimate dual threat in Saints history. And we get him super young, super primed. And we got to finish this off. 2019, Michael Thomas at our last wide receiver slot. I seem to be a broken record on this video when it comes to special seasons. Michael Thomas, another special season. NFL record in just 16 games with 149 catches. 4 years removed from the NFL adopting a 17th game. The record still belongs to Michael Thomas. Easy pick here in 2019 for Michael Thomas. Okay, 53 seasons up, 53 seasons down. We got our guys. Let me know in the comments which guys that I picked that you're just like, I just don't see it. Or just as importantly, what guys did I miss? Like, I know there are going to be some people that are upset that certain guys are not on this list, as much as I'm upset that they're not on this list. But it's just the way the years worked out and the stats for that specific year. And it's the best I could do. And trust me, this took a while to do. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, if you haven't already done so on the way out, I would super appreciate it. Who Dat, everybody. Let's try that again. Who Dat, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.